Let's talk about modes. Modes are scale inversions. So just like chord inversions, you're flipping the notes around so a different note is on bottom. With modes, you're flipping the scale around so that a different note is on bottom. And this, if you've learned about modes before, this is probably how you've heard teachers describe modes. You play the same scale, but you start on a different note. That's technically correct, but the problem is that way of learning them and practicing them doesn't actually give your ear a chance to hear the difference between the modes because you're hearing them all compared in the same context. And your ear remembers the tonic and is just relating each one of those sounds back to that sound rather than hearing it as its own new sound. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to learn the modes by playing a series of scales where we start each scale on the same note, just like in that very first scale lesson, and where we add flats around the circle of fifths, just like in that very first scale lesson. The only difference is going to be that instead of going to the tonic and ending on the tonic, we're going to end on that same note each time. And while we're doing it, in our left hand, we're going to play a seventh chord, skip one, play one, skip one, play one, based on that mode. So as we add flats, this seventh chord is going to change with the flats that we add. And in this way, we'll learn the modes in an order that makes musical sense. We'll be seeing them compared with modes next to each other that are similar. Each mode will only differ by one note. And that makes emotional sense. You're going to be hearing these different moods next to other moods that are similar to them. So we'll have like a really smooth emotional progression as we work through them. So I'm going to do this with you. Each mode, I'm going to play it. I'm going to show you the seventh chord. What I want you to do in your music journal is write the name of each mode as we get to it. We're going to write down what type of third and what type of seventh the chord has, or the mode has. Scales and chords are the same thing. They're just different expressions. Because that's what tells us the quality of chord. And we're going to write down any emotions that come up with that mode. Another thing that I have students do is think about if you were writing music for a movie or hearing this in a movie, what type of scene would be happening in the movie? Another thing you could think about if you're a songwriter is how might I use this sound in a song? What lyrics might this sound support? So let's get started. We're going to start every single mode on F, and we're going to start with no sharps or flats. And then we're going to add flats just like we did with scales. We'll add a B flat, then we'll add an E flat, we'll add an A flat, all the way around. All right, so this first mode starting on F looks like this. This mode is called Lydian. Lydian. And the seventh chord associated with it is this one, an F major 7. It has a major third and a major 7. All right, so write down Lydian, write down triangle 7. That's my symbol for a major 7 chord. Some people write capital M7. I like triangle 7 because it's easier to read even when my handwriting's messy. So this mode, one of the emotions I associate with this mode is the feeling of like a crisp, sunny fall day. And another emotion I associate with it is the feeling of leaving home to go do something exciting and new. So I'm going to play around in it a little bit so you can kind of hear some of the sounds that I like in it. Okay. So next we're going to add a B flat, and this is going to give us the F scale that you're now super familiar with. And this scale is called Ionian, I-O-N-I-A-N. And the 7th chord associated with it is the same. It's a major 7 chord. Okay. For me, this sounds like home. It sounds warm and comfortable and welcoming and familiar, which makes a lot of sense because it's the sound most of us have heard the most. So if Lydian sounds like going away from home for an exciting reason, Ionian sounds like a welcome return to home for me. Next, we'll add an E flat. And now you'll see that in the left hand, since we're adding an E flat, this chord is going to change to having a major 3rd and a minor 7th. So this is a dominant 7 chord. So you can write Mixolydian, that's the name of this mode, M-I-X-O-L-Y-D-I-A-N, and just write a 7. So we've got 2 major 7 sounds, and now we have a dominant 7 sound. And this sound, to me, is playful and whimsical and humorous and childlike, really. And it also is a sound that's really common in like swing music and blues music and this flat 7 major 3rd sound, this dominant 7 sound. Yeah. Okay, next we add an A flat, and the chord is going to change since we've got an A in it. Now we've got a minor 3rd and a minor 7. All right. This mode is called Dorian, D-O-R-I-A-N. And I'm going to write -7, which is my symbol for a minor 7. You'll also see lowercase m7, but again, if you're using uppercase m and lowercase m, it can get messy fast. It can get real hard to read. This mode for me sounds like sadness with hope. It also sounds like curiosity or quizzicalness. To me, a movie that I really associate this sound with is The Book of Kells, or Irish music in general, Irish fiddle tunes. There's a lot of this sound happening in there. Or maybe more than Irish, like Celtic, older Celtic sounds. I don't know, I'm not an expert in that, but this sound reminds me of that. And that's all that's really important for you is like, what does this mean to me? It doesn't have to mean the same thing to anyone else. Yeah. Next, we add a D flat, and we get Aeolian, A-E-O-L-I-A-N. And we still have a minor 7 chord. We still have a minor 3rd and a minor 7th. this sound for me is just sad. It's not sad with hope. It's just really sad. I associate this sound with the Batman soundtrack, the one written by Danny Elfman. The old Batman soundtrack has this riff in it that goes like and the melody is so it really has that sound. Okay. Next we add a G flat, and we get Phrygian, Phrygian. And we still have a minor 7 chord. And for me, this sound suggests danger, that something sad or melancholic has turned dangerous. Okay. So the very last flat we're going to add is a C flat. So you see we're going in the order of these flats, and we reach B, which can also be called a C flat. So we're going to replace the C's in this scale with B's. And now the chord we get is still a minor 7 chord, but now instead of having a perfect fifth in it, it has this interval, which is a new interval in this series. This is called a flat fifth. You can also be called an augmented fourth, diminished fifth, sharp fourth. These all mean the same thing. It can be called a tritone. In this chord, when it shows up in this chord, we call it a flat 5. So what we get is a minor 7, flat 5. And I'm just literally writing that. -7, flat 5. People also write this chord symbol as half diminished. That looks like this. So if I had a F half diminished chord, it would look like that. F half diminished. Or a minor 7 flat 5 chord. The scale sounds like this. This mode, Locrian, Locrian, is the hardest for me to describe. It's kind of a chameleon, which I love it for that. Sometimes it can sound just super chaotic, especially if I voice it. If I give it this voicing. It's very like chaos, like this isn't just dangerous, it's like absolutely falling apart. Sometimes if I play it strictly with that minor 7 flat 5 chord, it can really have like almost a sweet sound. Yeah, like an innocent sound. So I love this one. It's such a diverse sounding chord depending on what voicing you put it with. But the 7th chord voicing, yeah, that it goes with is this minor 7 flat 5. So now that we've got all 7 of these, here's what I want you to do with them. I want you to really spend time with each of them, a lot of time with each of them, and play with it and get really familiar with it, develop a relationship with it. Play around with which voicings, which clusters of notes can I play that express this mode well. Play around with which melodies do I like. If you recognize a melody from, a show or video game or music that comes from this mode that expresses this mode, write it down. Like for instance, Lydian. For me, I associate it really strongly with the forest temple theme from Zelda. So get super familiar with this, start developing a relationship with it. It's going to be a lifelong relationship. I still discover new sounds in each of these modes and new uses for them. So you're just building this huge relationship and library of voicings and library of melodies. And then get technical about noticing each of the intervals within the scale and about naming which note in this mode makes it different from the modes that are similar to it. So what I do is I just put them in groupings based on what type of seventh chord they have. So Lydian and Ionian both have a major 7 chord. That's what they express if they're expressed as a stacked chord. But the thing that's different between them is this 4th degree. It's whether or not the 4th degree is a perfect 4th or a sharp 4. So take note of that and then practice finding it all the way around the circle of fifths. So I'm going to find a C Ionian versus a C Lydian versus right? And go all the way around the circle like that. Practice being able to access this sound over each bass note, over each root note, along with a chord that expresses it. Mixolydian is the only scale in this system that expresses dominant 7, but you can still practice that all the way around the circle and get that sound really down. And then you've got 4 modes that all express minor 7 chords. So there's this wealth of different emotional content, of different shades of emotion that you can express over minor chords just from these 7 modes. So that's what I want you to do as if you take private lessons with me. We spend a lot of time on this. We spend a lot of time exploring, which different voicings, which different contexts, which melodies express this mode really well. And then, of course, there's not just modes of the Ionian scale. There's other scales that we're going to learn too, and they have modes. So this is a really long, really rich, really rewarding path. And it's one that doesn't have an end to it. You can be as inventive and as explorative as you decide to be. And I hope you have a lot of fun on that journey.